Hi, this is Marcel of Marcel on Tech, and today we are talking about a flagship beast from the likes of Apple. This is the iPad Pro with the M4 chip, and I want to talk to you about why you should seriously consider getting one of these, and maybe why not by comparison. Let's get into it. Okay, so off the cuff, straight away, this is the 13-inch iPad Pro with the M4 processor. Also, I got it with the Pencil Pro, and we're going to be talking briefly about both of these things. Now, this is not a full review because I haven't had this device for long enough. I'm borrowing this off a friend of mine who was very excited to share the fact that she had got it, and I'm very pleased. Thank you so much for lending it to me, by the way. And I wanted to talk about it in comparison to the likes of the last tablet that I've actually tested, which you'll find a card to just at the top of the screen here, which is the Lenovo P12. Now this is a way more budget device because let's talk about price straight away. That is the elephant in the room. This device is going to set you back just over 300 euros. This is a great device, to be fair, the Lenovo Pad. It's a different aspect ratio, but it does come with a stylus and so on. It's obviously running on Android with Lenovo's software on top, which is the i6 system. But you know what? To look at from a visual standpoint, there are strong similarities. Obviously, the aspect ratio, like I said, is different. iPad are famous for having this more boxy aspect ratio here. This is obviously the 13-inch, whereas the Lenovo is 12.7, and it's much more designed to be in this landscape position, although obviously upright, it is very, very good for apps like Instagram, which is still very poorly optimized for tablets, terribly optimized for the iPad, but actually way more optimized for a shape like the Lenovo. So there you can see immediately there is a difference in the aspect ratios and how the Android, surprisingly, despite the budget price, can actually be slightly more advantageous than it is looking at it from the Apple iPad Pro. However, let's talk about the pros first of all. The thing you're going to love about this iPad, and you can see it actually looking at it right now, is the anti-reflective panel. This is an OLED screen because they have finally switched over to OLED, and it is awesome. It's got very dark darks. As you can see, I've got a very low colored dark background there, but it is absolutely gorgeous to look at. And really is very, very clever that they're not using this reflective glass anymore. So when you do hold it up, but there's a lot of light behind me here, you can't see very many reflections. Whereas if you contrast that to this is almost like a mirror. Now, if I turn the screen off and it goes dark, you've got a lot of reflections, but even with the screen on, you also get an awful lot of reflections. So this is a technology that is only just coming into the flagships with the likes of Samsung doing it on the S24. Again, you'll see my review of that. But this is obviously in the iPad, which came out back in May of this year, and it just looks great to look at this panel. And it is absolutely gorgeous. Now, iPad have somehow always managed to have pretty good screens despite them being LCD and fairly low quality. They've managed to optimize them always very, very well. But this premium device has a premium screen, and you can tell, and it is absolutely gorgeous. What else is it about this iPad that you would want to consider? Well, snappy, super snappy. Everything on this iPad works really fast. So downloads, obviously, if you're connected to a decent Wi-Fi, this is the Wi-Fi only version. If you're connected to a half decent Wi-Fi, which most people have at home, then you will get downloads almost instantaneously. It is quite scary, actually. Loading up websites, almost instantaneous. I literally loaded up the likes of the BBC or the New York Times, and those are very dense, a lot of action happening in their websites. And the comparison between the two is night and day. Now, that's not to say that Lenovo is bad, but this takes maybe to refresh or to load maybe about 2-3 seconds maximum. This takes less than a second. The Apple product just has all the speed that it needs. It's almost like it's already preloaded, and I did clear the cache in order to make sure that it was nice and difficult and it had to load up fresh. But because of the power from the M4 chip, this device is more powerful than most of the technology I'm using every day, and just by itself. So it really is absolutely fantastic, and I really, really like it for that reason. Now let's talk about some of the unfortunate realities of this. This device is over 1,300 euros. You can definitely buy a laptop for that. You can definitely buy a flagship computer for that. You can definitely buy a new phone for that, which will come with, in the case of phones like Samsung, which actually comes with desktop versions such as DeX built in. Apple still do not have a dedicated desktop version, but does that actually matter in the reality? Because the Lenovo does have a PC version or PC mode built into the device. So if I want to switch into a PC desktop view on the tablet when connected to a keyboard, for example, it does it automatically. Of course, you can connect a keyboard to this, either third party or Apple, but it will still look like that. It still has all the tiles, it still looks exactly the same, nothing changes, and you still have the iPad OS system. Now, Apple are slowly migrating and combining both the Mac OS system and the iPad OS system into very similarities. There are settings and things like that that look quite similar, but the iPad itself is still very much a separate operating system that looks like an iPhone. It's a cross between an iPhone and an iPad, obviously, where you've just got these random tiles dotted all over the place. Now, what I am looking forward to is the next operating system, which will allow for a lot more customization, where finally Apple are allowing us to move the icons where we want for a change. That's never happened before. You download an app and it goes right there and you cannot move it. You can try and drag it around if you want to and move it around your desktop, but if I let go of it because I want it there, it's now stayed there. So that is amazing. That is something that is very, very new, and I'm very, very happy that they're now finally allowing us to do that. So that is good news, and finally, and there's a lot more room for improvement in that regard, but it's acceptable. We've still got the app library here, which is basically just a collection of all your apps in one place, but there's still room to make it a little bit more optimized, as well as to optimize the space that is available on this device. Like I say, it is going to be a speed thing. It is going to be a screen quality thing. So that is going to really differentiate this type of device, a flagship device, from a more budget tablet. However, when you look at my side-by-side comparisons between the Lenovo and this tablet, you're not going to see a huge difference other than in the reflections. Now let's talk about the pen. The Apple Pen, this in itself is 200 euros. So it's very, very expensive. But again, it does have its functions. Now, I'm not an artist, so I'm not going to confess to be one, but I'll show you what it looks like when you put them side by side. And again, there is disparity between how it writes on the screen by comparison to the Lenovo. And you can see that there is definite lag on the Lenovo by comparison to the Apple Pencil, which does actually seem like you're writing directly on the screen, like you would with a pencil in real life. The reaction time is almost, well, it's pretty much instantaneous. It feels like you're writing on that screen with an actual pen. And that is quite special. It's quite a unique feeling. Also, it does have the touch sensitivity button on the pen, so you can actually create actions and reactions from there, and it will react to what you do. But what we don't necessarily have is, for example, I would quite like to be able to remote control the iPad. I'm clicking the button on the pencil, but it's not taking a photo. I've currently got it in camera mode, but it's not actually taking an image of me. So it doesn't have a remote for camera function, which is weird. Whereas on the Lenovo, that does actually work. So I don't understand why Apple doesn't allow for that if you've got a peripheral that you can take away. But it's there, it charges, it's very cool when it connects, it magnetizes really, really well to the top. And then in finale, to talk about the design. Sound quality from the quad speakers, because you've got 2 speaker grills here, 2 speaker grills here, and of course, finally USB Type-C. The sound quality is good, but again, it isn't necessarily tremendously better. What you have got is a surprisingly thin device, which is incredible, really. If we take a look at just how thin that is, it feels like a plate of glass. It's just amazing what they've been able to get in here for it, and it is super duper lightweight. We have also got the case, which is almost as heavy as this. The case is slightly lighter, but obviously it doubles up when you put them together. But they fit absolutely seamlessly, and it is an absolute pleasure to hold the iPad, as always, because of that slightly different aspect ratio. The Lenovo certainly isn't bad, but one-handed use or one-handed holding is going to be a little bit tricky because of the fact that you've got a different aspect ratio, the weight distribution is a little bit more, and it is going to be hard to hold in one hand, which is why you're going to want a case. So I do have a case for this, and it just works really, really well and sits and props up really, really nicely. So again, the bezels on both of these devices are actually comparable. They're actually quite similar. They're quite narrow, quite slim, which I really like. There's enough space to place your finger to hold the device, but you've got a great amount of real estate, which is absolutely awesome. So in fairness to the Lenovo, which is a budget device, everything works on here just as well as it does on the iPad. The only difference is going to be instantaneous on the iPad. It is very, very fast. You will get support software-wise on the iPad for probably the next 5 years, if you're honest, especially with the M4 chip. You won't necessarily get that length of time on Lenovo, but we are running the latest Android system, and it did update whilst I've been using it. So in fairness, if you're on a budget, and if you need to do basic to semi-difficult gaming activities, this is going to be more than adequate. If you're looking for the best of the best, money's not an object, and you're happy to spend over 1,300 euros, you cannot go wrong with the Apple product. But of course, bearing in mind that you're then being drawn into the ecosystem in a much stronger way, in that obviously AirDrop and so on and so forth is much easier only feasible with other Apple products. But there are workarounds. If you'd like to know what those are in terms of some apps that I've been using for file transfer, put a comment below. But otherwise, what would you choose? If you had a choice between a more budget device that does 90% of what the cheaper one does, where you could spend the money elsewhere, or would you just be happy to blow the money and go straight for the iPad M4? If you have one, tell me what you like about it, what you love about it, and what the difference is as to why you think it was good value for money. I'd love to hear that. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you very soon in my next one. Bye-bye for now.